this guitar only has 2 strings. What the heck? Hey guys, welcome back to the Bald Shredder channel. And no, I am not making a 2-string guitar. So what's going on here then? Well, you can see it only has 2 strings. It doesn't have any pickups or electronics or anything. And this guitar is basically in the initial stages of being put together and built. But before I continue with the whole process and put the whole thing together and finish it, I wanted to show you guys what I'm doing right here and why I have only these 2 strings on here, because I think this is something important for people to know, especially if you're putting together your own guitars. So what I'm checking here, guys, is the reason I only need the 2 outside strings is I'm checking to make sure that the placement of the bridge is correct in relation to the fretboard. I want to know that the strings are going to be centered exactly and not too far on one side. So you put the low E string and the high E string, and then you check like how close is each string to the edge of the fretboard, because you don't want it too close, like right at the edge or even like beyond the fretboard, because then when you're playing, if it's right at the edge of the fretboard, you're playing, especially on the high E string, the string will have a tendency to kind of like slip off the edge of the board, and that's what you don't want to happen. Now in the case of this guitar, I had this guitar body made by KNE Guitars, and he pre-drilled the holes for the bridge for me. So I didn't have to put the bridge on there and drill the holes. But even though the holes were pre-drilled, I still need to make sure that it's lined up properly, because you never know. He could have drilled the holes like a 0.5 millimeter to the right too far, or a 0.5 millimeter to the left too far, or you don't know how the neck's gonna fit in the neck pocket, if it's gonna be perfectly centered with where the holes are drilled for the bridge. So you really need to check that, because before I go through all the process of like finishing it and everything, what if it's not centered and I need to fill those holes and then move it over slightly and re-drill the holes? That could be a possibility. So you just wanna like double check, triple check to make sure the strings are centered. And in this case, guys, the strings are perfectly centered. So yeah, everything matches up on this one perfectly. Now doing this becomes especially important if you've got a guitar body where the holes for the bridge are not already drilled, and you're gonna need to drill those holes for the screws to hold the bridge in, because you need to make sure, again, that it is exactly in the right spot so that the strings are centered with the neck over the fretboard. So like in the case of this guitar, I put a hardtail bridge on this. I converted it from like a Strat style bridge into a hardtail. All right, so I needed to make sure that I was gonna put the bridge in the correct spot, right? So you put the 2 outside strings on there, and you've got it down here, and you get some tension on the strings, and you tape it down, or you hold it down with your hand, and then you just kind of, move it around a little bit until you get it to where the strings are exactly centered, or as close as you can get it, and then you need to mark those spots where you're gonna drill the holes for the screws. And that fixes the whole issue of like, oh geez, I drilled the holes in the wrong spot and the strings are not centered. By doing that, you'll know that the strings are centered, and hopefully you got it in the right spot. Now previously in some of my other guitar builds, when I didn't do that, I didn't put the strings on there and center it, what I did was, like, I got a straight edge, I had the neck, bolted into the neck pocket, and then I got like a straight edge ruler, and I drew lines along the side of the neck coming this way and then like this way, and then measured, and then got the bridge and put it in between those 2 lines exactly like in the middle, and that worked out pretty well. But even with that, there could be like a tiny little movement, or you don't get it exactly right, or there could be a mistake. So really the best way is going to be to put the low E string and the high E string and make sure they're centered, get your bridge in position. And of course you've also got to take into account, like, you're measuring from the nut to the saddles. If it's a 25.5 scale length, so you're measuring from the nut to the saddles, not the edge of the bridge, to the saddles, 25.5 inches, if that's the scale length. So those are the 2 things that you're checking when you're positioning the bridge and deciding where I'm gonna drill those holes. Okay guys, so that's all I wanted to go over today for this video. So next time you decide to put a kit together or build a guitar or whatever, or maybe for the first time, think about doing that. And it doesn't matter what kind of bridge. If it's a Floyd Rose bridge or whatever, same thing. You want to make sure you're getting those strings centered exactly over the fretboard. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.